The Bellwether Hotel had the kind of face that made you cross the street. 12 stories of turn-of-the-century bravado, its red brick grin chipped to ruin, its windows blind with dust. The locals in Rooke's End, what passed for a town on the wind-skinned coast, called it a monument to bad decisions and worse weather. They also called it closed, which was true until it wasn't. On a March night that arrived like a bad alibi, a single light flickered to life on the 12th floor. Room 1207, the room that had never been rented, the room the architect swore he hadn't drawn. 15 minutes later, the hotel's lobby bell rang once, clear as faith. There was no night clerk. There hadn't been a clerk for 30 years. A minute after that, the Bellwether's front doors, oak-shouldered and brass, unlatched as if a patient hand had pressed them. Outside, rain stitched the empty road into something that almost looked like a map. Inside, the check-in counter waited, with its ledger open to a page no one had turned since 1989. A gust flipped it. The pen beside the ledger rolled 1 inch, then stopped, as if a hand had considered signing and changed its mind. The lobby clock, which had not ticked since the first bush, gave a single breathless tock. When the wind died, a name had appeared on the page in a careful, uncertain hand. Ivy March. The rain stopped, like an answer. Ivy did not believe in haunted places. She believed in patterns. She collected the kind that other people stepped over, missing person curves that mapped onto hotel registries. 2 unsolved fires, exactly 47 years apart. The rhythm of names that appeared and reappeared in the wrong centuries. She called it work when she wrote about it, and obsession when she didn't. She had not planned to stop in Rooke's End. She had planned to keep driving until the coast ran out of excuses. But a blue sign with a shell and the word hostel pointed inland, then lied. The road spat her out in front of the Bellwether, as if it had been aiming for that all along. The light in 1207 was not a lighthouse. It was worse, an invitation written in the accent of her grief. She parked badly and killed the engine. The night pushed both hands against the windshield. Her phone had 2 bars, then 1, then none. The map app spun in a small, furious circle, like a moth in a jar. She looked up at the hotel and saw a shape moving behind one of the 5th-floor windows, a kid's silhouette, quick and patient at once. Not her brother. Her brother had been 11 the last time she saw him, and 33 now, and memory insists on getting math wrong when it hurts. The silhouette lifted an arm and waved. Not hello, the kind of wave you give a person who already belongs to a place. Absolutely not. She told no one and stepped out into rain too fine to apologize. The front doors of the Bellwether were heavier than they looked, but gave way with the indifference of money. The lobby smelled like old heat and the chemical ghost of lemon. A chandelier sulked overhead, convinced it had once been admired. The check-in desk still had its bell, brass gone home to brown. Ivy pressed it with 2 fingers. The ring arrived, distant and bright, somewhere high in the hotel. A door shut softly, with the confidence of a person who knows which room is theirs. "Nope," she said, and then said, "Okay," because she had made getting herself into rooms like this her business. The ledger lay open. She didn't mean to touch the pen. She meant only to look. But the pen found her hand with the slow magnet of habit. Before she could decide not to, the nib kissed paper, and her name wrote itself in a way that didn't look like her hand, but did look like her. Ivy March. As her name dried, the lobby clock coughed out a single minute. The elevator doors, archaic grate and milky glass, shuddered. A floor indicator with a little brass swallow lit 3, then 1, then 3 again, as if the hotel were practicing. A folded index card leaned against the bell. It had not been there a moment before. On it, the same careful hand that had written Ivy March a second ago had written, Room 313. The card was damp at the edges, as if it had been left in the rain of another hour. I didn't book a room, she said to the empty lobby, which did not bother to disagree. She picked up the card. On the back, in block letters, someone had printed, If the hallway tells you a story, do not answer. If the phone rings from another floor, say you are out. If you find your name in a room that is not your room, leave it. It is not for you. Terrific, Ivy said. House rules. She slid the index card into her pocket and lifted the grate. The elevator rose on the sound of the 20th century clearing its throat. The third-floor corridor wore carpet that had learned to be burgundy, while most of it forgot. Sconces along the walls gave light like a doctor's bad news. Room numbers, tidy little brass shields, marched in odd, then even. 313 waited, with the door ever so slightly ajar, as if whoever had gone in meant to come right back. The room had the kind of layout architects draw when they're in love with corners. A bed not made today, but made well once. A writing desk, whose drawer had been opened and shut by ghosts with good manners. A wardrobe that chose not to creak. Curtains that held the rain at bay like good parents. On the bed sat a leather-bound registry. It was not the lobby ledger. This one was older and more pleased with itself. The spine read Bellwether Guest Register, in gold that had taken its time tarnishing. The top page had 2 names and a date, March 13th, 1923. 1. Mrs. Evangeline Harrow, 1207. 2. Mr. Rowan Keats, 313. The next pages had 3 more dates, each with room 313, and a name Ivy recognized from her stacks of research. People who had been missing enough to make a shape. The last entry bore no date. Ivy March, 313. Underneath, in a different hand, someone had added, Welcome back. She read it twice, then shut the book hard enough to startle herself. The room phone rang. The sound had texture, bakelite, and patience. She let it ring once, twice. On the third ring, she picked up and said, No thank you, because it was easier than naming fear. A woman's voice spoke in the register of lullabies and court depositions. Miss March, we weren't sure as we had the right century. Who is this? Evangeline Harrow, the voice said. I see you found my registry. The 1923 entry. Yes, I came here to keep someone from leaving. I left instead. The person you were keeping? Rowan Keats, she said. A playwright of no renown and dangerous charm. He checked into 313, I checked into 1207. The Bellwether kept us both and lost us badly. Where are you now? In the wrong floor, Evangeline said, pleasantly. We all are, eventually. The phone clicked. The line went dead, but not the way modern lines die. It went dead like a curtain falls. Purposefully, Ivy stared at the receiver until the dial tone began to sound like a voice she once loved and couldn't help. Something shifted at the threshold. A shadow gathered like a spill. When she turned, there was no one there. Just the door with its polite ajar. The hall outside smelled of chlorine that had not recently been used. Footsteps padded 2 doors down. A child again. The cadence of a child who knows how to be quiet. Ivy stepped into the corridor and looked left, then right. The runner bent gently, as if someone had just turned the corner. ... Hey, she said, and the polite word ran out ahead of her like a dog off leash. The corridor intersected another that intersected a third in a geometry that suggested the architect had been bored or scolded or both. At the end of the last stretch, a green exit sign glowed its steady lie. She passed 317, then 319, then 317 again. She stopped. The hall kept going a half inch, then agreed to stop too, embarrassed. When she turned, her door, 313, waited 1 pace closer than it should have been. On its brass numbers, a thumbprint. Small, left hand, smudged. Okay, she said, louder than before. This is not my first corridor. The carpet toward the elevator buckled and then smoothed, like breath under a blanket. She went back into 313 and closed the door and set the chain, because rituals are scaffolds. The chain slid like a good idea. The registry had opened itself. The page showed a name, written slantwise in ink, that had not yet dried. Rowan Keats, 313. 03-13-23. Checkout. Pending. Underneath, a line of smaller letters walked the margin, like a secret. If the bell rings after midnight, do not look up. He smiles too well. Ivy smoothed the page with a palm that seemed to remember being steady. Her thumb traced the groove where a fountain pen had bit long ago. She imagined a slender man leaning over this book, the tip of his tongue touching his lip as he found the phrasing to be his own. She imagined Evangeline upstairs, composing a different version of the same decision. The room's radiator woke with a howl. Someone had taught it. In its roar, she thought she heard a word. Stay. I never do, she told it. And the radiator subsided to a grumble that sounded like, you will. On the way to the 5th floor, the elevator forgot 3 and offered 12. Ivy closed the grate and pressed 5 again. The dial's brass swallow made it halfway to 5, thought better, then completed the arc as if hoping she hadn't noticed. The 5th floor hallway was clean where the 3rd had been convincing. Here, the carpet knew burgundy intimately. The sconces had the color of money. One door, 507, stood open to a darkness that had the permission of furniture. She called, "Hello?" and felt the shape of ridiculous on her tongue. "Hello," someone said back, matching her tone exactly. She stepped closer. The room beyond 507 revealed itself by inches. A bureau whose mirror had been turned to face the wall. A suitcase open on a chair with nothing in it but air arranged like shirts. A bedspread that had learned not to wrinkle. On the bed lay a man's jacket, black, the sleeve lined from elbow to wrist with cigarette burns. A floorboard spoke. She turned. A child stood in the doorway across the hall. Boy, perhaps 10. Hair trying not to curl. Face grave with the kind of solemn joy boys save for the moments they are entrusted with something that matters. He wore a windbreaker, too thin for this climate. He had no shoes. "Hi," Ivy said softly. "Are you?" She did not say Theo. She did not practice old wounds on strangers. "Porter," he said. The word had unclear capital letters and no last name, like a job badge. "You checked in." "I didn't mean to." "Nobody does. But if you sign, it keeps you." He tilted his head toward her pocket. "You did sign." "I guess I did." "People write who they are where they can't misplace it," he said, as if quoting a clerk. "Are you Ivy March for real, or just for here?" She thought about the many versions of her that had signed other ledgers. Billing software, booking forms, hospital admissions, permission slips for school trips no one went on. "I'm real enough," she said. "Okay." He nodded, apparently satisfied. "You're looking for 1207. She tried not to. "How did you?" "Everybody here looks for someone. Yours is upstairs. She's loud when she prays. Evangeline." He rolled the name in his mouth as if it were a hard candy. "She keeps asking the same question. The room answers different every time." "What question?" "Did you leave me, or did I lose you?" He looked at the floor. "I don't know which one is worse." "Where do you live, Porter?" "In the lifts," he said matter-of-factly. "And sometimes the laundry chute. It's warm there. You shouldn't be here alone." "I'm not alone." He smiled, and for a second he looked like every kid Ivy had ever seen, carrying 2 coffees very carefully. "You're here now." She wanted to put a coat around him that would be a life. Instead, she said, "Would you show me 1207? He shook his head. "Only you can find it. The hotel moves rooms for the people it wants." Then, with bureaucratic gentleness, "Mind the phone. If it rings with your name and your voice, don't pick up. That one's from 313, and he smiles too well." Before she could decide whether guilt or gratitude was appropriate, he turned and walked away. The hallway lengthened for him, like a carpet that knew its job. He did not look back. The elevator arrived already open, as if it had recognized her posture. It took her to 12, even when she did not press the button. The 12th floor remembered glamour as a language, not a photo. Here the wallpaper still had its flock, and the ceiling medallions had not yielded to leaks, and the chandelier wore its crystals like a laugh. Here the doors had brass plates engraved with names as well as numbers. 1201, the arbor. 1205, the stationer. 1207, the observatory. The observatory's door was painted the deep green of racing and envy. The keyhole had the shape of a teardrop someone had tried to reason with. The knob turned without argument. The door opened inward to a room that had not been aired in a century and didn't mind. A telescope occupied the center like a guest too important to sneak in quietly. Around the walls, glass cases held pinned moths labeled with common names and the name of the person who had last seen them, alive. The windows, 3 tall green eyes, stared down the coast to where the ocean did its arithmetic. On the writing desk lay a diary and a pair of gloves. The diary was leather, worn to the memory of hands. The gloves were small, wrists buttoned, left cuff stained by an old, careful blood. Ivy opened the diary. Evangeline Harrow wrote precisely and without drama. March 10th, 1923. Rowan has chosen a room that must not exist. The architect swears on his pin-rolled soul he never drew it. The number is 313. He laughs when I ask if he did it on purpose. He says every building keeps an accident like a heart. March 12th. The phone rings when he sleeps. It rings from under the bed and from the bath, and once from the lampshade. When I answer, my voice says, "Hello," and asks me if I am alone. I have never been so in a room with myself. March 13. He smiled. The kind of smile that writes a woman's name in a register she cannot leave. I put on my gloves and went to the roof and watched the weather choose. It chose him. March 14. I checked in to hold him here. I think the holding holds me. The last page was half written, the ink thin as a vein. If I ask the hotel, it says I left him. If I ask his room, it says he lost me. If I ask the registry, it writes both answers at once. When the bell rings after midnight, don't look up. He smiles too well. I am tired of being smiled at like a door. The radiator in the observatory woke in a shudder, startled by the century. The phone on the wall, black, lacquered, cord twisted into a patient spiral, rang once, then again, then settled into a cadence that felt more like calling than ringing. She lifted the receiver. "Yes?" "Don't come down," Evangeline said, voice near and far. "He's on the landing. He has remembered a new joke." "Is he Rowan?" "He is what rooms make of charm," she said. "Please don't look directly at it. You will think the word choice belongs to you." "I'm coming down." "You are very brave," Evangeline said, and Ivy could not tell whether the woman meant it as consolation or warning. "Take the gloves." The gloves fit Ivy's hands like new rules. She stepped into the hall. The carpet had been brushed by footsteps that did not shed dirt. At the bend in the corridor, a man leaned against the wall, as if time were a polite hostess. He wore yesterday's suit with the posture of a revolution that still believes it might work. He was handsome, in the way of men who make women consider the shape of their own sentences. He looked at Ivy and became pleased on purpose. "Welcome," he said, and his voice made the corners in her mind offer to rearrange. "Rowan Keats," she said. He bowed, an inch of courtesy. "Guilty is named. And you?" "Ivy March." "Perfect," he said. "I was hoping for spring." She did not smile. "You've been here 100 years." "Only long enough to understand a few things," he said, easy as linen. "For instance, rooms don't keep people. People keep rooms. Shall we be kept together?" He held out his hand. It was ungloved and immaculate. She remembered the registry, the radiator's word, porter's warning. She kept her hands at her sides. "I'm not here for you," she said. "No one is," he said, too quickly. "Not at first." The elevator coughed behind her. The doors were open. Inside, the little brass swallow pointed to 3. The grate stood ready, like a mouth without discourtesy. Rowan smiled the way falling feels. "Don't look up," Evangeline had written. Ivy looked down at her gloves and found that one of them had a small split at the seam where a life could get in. "If I sign the lobby ledger again," she said, "if I write the right thing, will the hotel move your room to somewhere honest?" Rowan's eyes flickered. "Not pain exactly. The recognition a liar feels when someone has been rude enough to be precise." "It might," he said, for a price. What price? He glanced at the elevator. Your floor. Her palm itched where the diary's last line had sat. She took a step backward, not toward him. I'll take the stairs. The stairs love you, he said, and it sounded like a curse. On the landing, she paused. The midnight bell did not ring. It thought about it and changed its mind. The hotel shifted around her, not malevolent so much as movie. The kind of building that believes you're there to give it your best story. Ivy went down. The steps counted themselves like receipts. In the lobby, the ledger waited where it had. The pen rolled 1 inch toward her. She turned it end for end and wrote, in the margin beside her own name, "This is not my room." The lobby lights dimmed, then brightened, like a patient's eyes under morphine. The elevator's swallow flipped from 3 to 12 and stuck. The index card by the bell, room 313, turned itself over. On the back, a new line had appeared, in the tidy hand that kept being hers. If you don't want a room, take the night clerk's key. A brass key lay beside the bell. It had not been there a moment ago. Its fob read, "Manager," in an enamel gone old tea yellow. It was warm in her palm, as if someone had held it as recently as later. "Okay," Ivy said to the lobby, to the hotel, to the part of herself that had never known where to sleep. "Let's see who's on shift." She headed for the door marked "Staff Only." The corridor beyond did what corridors do, lengthened where it should have stopped and turned where it should have squared. At the end, an office. The kind with a window onto the lobby, and a chair worn by the dignity of boredom. On the desk, a black phone, a whistle on a chain, a wooden box with a slot as if for confessions, and a stack of incident reports dated in 3 different decades. She opened the top report. The complaint was written in a crisp hand. March 14th, 1923. Guest in 313 refuses to check out. Smiles too much. Suggest bell after midnight. She set it aside and found a newer sheet beneath. October 19th, 1989. Guest in 313, signed wrong name. Phone calls from other floors. Suggest leaving ledger open. Beneath that, a third. March 13th, 20. Ivy March checked in. If found, return to room or to wherever her name isn't. The phone in the office rang. She answered on reflex. Front desk. "Miss March," Evangeline said, breathless, as if she had run across a floor that changed beneath her feet. "He is charming at the door, but not at the threshold. Do not let him in." "I won't." "And if you find him in your room already?" "I'll leave," Ivy said. "It isn't mine." Silence at the other end. "Then, good. A hotel will have to give you the one you came for." "What room is that?" "The one where your brother slept before the roads stopped," Evangeline said. "Didn't you know?" Ivy sank into the chair. "He was in a motel, 3 towns over. The Bellwether keeps annexes the way churches keep crypts," Evangeline said. And Ivy could hear the smile she hadn't trusted herself with. "All beds are the same to what sleeps under them. Find your annex." The phone clicked. The line went soft and old. Ivy looked at the key in her palm, and the ledger on the desk, and the clock that had resumed the dignity of minutes. She drew a map in her head. Lobby, staff hall, service lift, annex corridors. The way the air grows thinner where the hotel has borrowed rooms from cheaper buildings. She stood. She put the whistle on its chain around her neck, manager's key in her pocket, registry under her arm. She walked toward the service lift that never stops at floors that exist. As the gate closed, Porter appeared at the edge of the office window, shoes finally on, solemn as a new employee. "Mind the numbers," he said. "They don't always mean floors." "What do they mean?" "Whose story you're in," he said. The lift dropped. The service lift didn't descend. It slid, as if gravity were negotiating terms. The brass swallow spun in lazy circles, the floor indicator showing symbols she didn't recognize. Not numbers, but glyphs, like the ones monks carve into prayer wheels. When it stopped, the gate opened onto a hallway that shouldn't have existed. The carpet here was thinner, threadbare, patterned with a repeating motif, a key crossed over a clock face. The walls were plastered in a faded wallpaper that once had flowers, now only ghosts of flowers. A sign on the wall read, "Annex East, rooms 1 to infinity." The doors were all wrong, some small as broom closets, others towering and arched like church entrances. Room 3 halves, room 8A, room 11-ish. Every few feet, the numbering system changed languages or centuries. She passed a door marked Theo March, 7C. Ivy froze. Her brother's name was etched in tarnished brass. She pressed her ear to the door. Silence. Then, faint as breath, a sound. A boy's voice, humming, a song she knew, the one he used to sing before nightmares. She turned the handle. Locked. The manager's key burned warm in her pocket. She slid it into the lock. It turned with a sigh. The room was small. One bed, a chair, a wall of newspaper clippings, all dated March 2003, the year Theo vanished. There were photos, too. Him on his bike, him blowing out candles, him in a hospital bed. And at the center of the wall, a Polaroid of Ivy, 8 years younger, eyes red from crying. On the bed lay a shoe, a child's left sneaker. She recognized the faded lightning bolt on the side. And written in childish scrawl on the wall above the bed, "I didn't mean to leave." The radiator hissed, shaping words into steam. Stay, stay, stay. She stepped back. "No," she whispered, "not like this." The door slammed. Locks engaged one by one. The window bricked itself shut. The ceiling grew lower, the floor higher, the room trying to swallow her. "Manager override," she hissed, pressing the key to the door. It glowed, white hot. The locks screamed and gave way. Ivy stumbled into the hall, gasping. The shoe fell from her trembling hand. From somewhere deeper in the annex, a bell rang once, then again, then again. The bell's rhythm wasn't random. It was counting. 13 times, then silence. A pause. Then 13 again. "Room 313, Ivy whispered. "It's calling." The hallway pulsed, as if the hotel itself had a heartbeat. Doors shifted positions. Walls expanded. Light fixtures flickered, revealing painted words beneath layers of wallpaper. "The bell keeps us. The registry remembers." At the corridor's end, stood a massive double door. No number, no plaque, just a carved symbol. The same crossed key and clock from the carpet. The bell rang a final time. The doors swung inward. Room 313 was no longer a room. It was a cathedral of corridors, a spiral of staircases that led back into themselves. At its center stood Rowan Keats, unchanged by a century, smiling like the end of a sentence. "Welcome home," he said. "We've been keeping the light on." "I'm not staying," Ivy spat. "Of course you are. You signed, remember?" He gestured to the walls. They were covered in thousands of names, some carved, some written in blood, some glowing faintly. Among them, she found hers. Ivy March, etched deep, permanent. "Erase it," she said. "I can't." He stepped closer. "But you can, if you give me something else." "What?" "Your story. Your brother's story. A memory you still believe belongs to you." The air tightened. Her knees weakened. She felt the weight of every page she'd written about disappearances, every sleepless night spent searching for answers. "No," she whispered. "Then you'll stay, just like Evangeline, just like Theo." Behind him, a door opened, and Theo stepped out. Older, hollow-eyed, smiling too wide. "Hi, Ivy," he said gently. "I've been waiting." Theo's eyes weren't right. They were the same color as the hallway's sconces. Too bright, too knowing. He walked like a marionette being pulled by strings just under the skin. "It's not him," Ivy said. "It's the version the hotel remembers," Rowan corrected. "The one who stayed." Theo reached for her hand. "Come on, it's easier if you don't fight it." She stepped back. "I didn't come here to stay. I came to bring you home." Rowan sighed. Such a human word. Home. "You keep thinking it's a place. It's not. It's a ledger entry. And this building," he gestured around them, "this building is the ledger." The walls began to shift, forming rooms she'd never entered but somehow recognized. Their childhood living room, Theo's hospital ward, her apartment, the night she decided to stop looking. All memories, all rewritten. "Sign it," Rowan said, holding out the registry. "Sign here, and the hotel will give you your brother. Walk out the front door together. Go back to your story. And if I don't, then you'll both stay, forever." The pen in her hand was warm. The page before her was blank except for one line. "Ivy March accepts permanent residency." She pressed the pen's tip to the paper and stopped. "No," she said. "This isn't my story." Ivy dropped the pen. The room shook. Lights exploded. Rowan's smile faltered for the first time. "What are you doing?" he hissed. "Leaving. You can't leave." "Watch me." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the manager's key. It pulsed with light, brighter than the chandeliers, brighter than the cursed names on the walls. When she plunged it into the floor, the ground cracked open, revealing not darkness, but daylight. The registry screamed. Names bled off the walls. Doors burst open, releasing hundreds of people, some ghosts, some whole, some nothing but memories given shape. Among them, Porter ran past her barefoot and laughing. Evangeline Harrow stood in the doorway, eyes wet with gratitude. Theo stumbled forward. His eyes were his again. "Ivy, is it over?" She took his hand. Let's go home. Rowan lunged. You'll regret this. The world won't remember you. Then we'll remember each other, she said, and stepped into the light. The Bellwether howled, then sighed, then fell silent. When Ivy opened her eyes, she was standing on a rain-slick street. The Bellwether was gone, a vacant lot in its place. Theo stood beside her, older, thinner, but real. Was it real? He asked. She looked down at her palm. The manager's key was gone, but there was ink on her skin, faint and fading. Checkout complete. She smiled. It was real enough.